Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we've got something really different. A fascinating, almost sort of anthropological mission, you could say.
Yeah, this isn't usual.
We've been looking at this, well, this single piece of source material. It's highly opinionated, very specific, and it basically tries to define the intellectual qualifications you need to appreciate a certain popular animated series.
Right. It's quite something.
Yeah, it's not your typical review or, analysis. It feels more like a manifesto of intellectual self-assertion, maybe. Like an instruction manual for gatekeeping, but wrapped up in pop culture commentary.
That's a good way to put it.
So our task today is pretty clear. We're going to extract the core arguments. We'll dissect the rhetoric, how it builds this sense of exclusivity.
Use it as a lens, maybe.
Exactly. Use it as a lens to explore how fandom, modern fandom, intersects with these claims about knowledge and intellectual hierarchy. And to dive into the psychology of, well, required intelligence.
And that mission statement is really key here, because the text we're looking at, it's just so absolute in its claims.
Astonishingly so.
Yeah, it demands not just, like, casual enjoyment. It insists on having a high IQ, mastering specific, pretty advanced academic fields. It actually names theoretical physics.
Right. Theoretical physics.
Specific literary history, philosophy, all to prove, supposedly, the depth of the show it's championing.
It sets the bar incredibly high from the start.
It does. And just to be clear for everyone listening, we're approaching this text impartially.
Okay.
We're treating it like a primary source, like a detailed framework for how someone might try to create an intellectual in-group.
So we're analyzing what it says and how it says it.
Precisely. How the author uses specialized knowledge or the claim of it to justify exclusion and, the social function this kind of rhetoric might serve. We're not here to say if the claims about IQ are right or if the show is good or bad.
No, that's not the point.
No, we're just exploring the sheer audacity, really, and the detailed way this intellectual barrier is constructed.
Okay, let's dive right in then, because the author, they really don't waste any time. They leap straight to the ultimate claim. The absolute starting point for everything is, to be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand.
Right off the bat. No messing around.
And that's where the rhetorical strategy really kicks off, isn't it? By citing IQ, the text tries to anchor its argument in something. Well, something that sounds measurable, objective.
Yeah.
Maybe even innate.
Yeah, like it's a biological fact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the implication is immediate. If you don't understand or like the show, it's not just taste or preference, or maybe you haven't seen enough episodes. No, it implies it's a fundamental, neurological failing. You just can't process it properly.
It's quite a claim. And what's fascinating about starting there with IQ is that it acts like this master key, the ultimate prerequisite you can't argue with, supposedly.
Right.
It instantly shifts appreciation from being, subjective, emotional, into an objective measure of raw intelligence. And the text supports this by saying the humor itself is extremely subtle.
Okay, subtle. What does that mean here?
Well, subtle here feels like a very loaded term. It doesn't just mean quiet or nuanced, I think. In this context, it seems to function more as a synonym for intellectually obscure, densely coded.
Okay, so if it's subtle,
then by definition, only those with superior processing power, the high IQ folks, can actually detect it, let alone decipher it. So this move immediately sets up this powerful, almost insurmountable gate, based purely on your presumed intellectual capacity. It really sets the stage for everything else.
and then it builds on that, because it's apparently not enough just to be generally smart.
No, exactly.
Which is where the text pivots, right? From this idea of innate capacity to needing specific acquired knowledge, the author introduces a very specific academic prerequisite.
Yeah, the theoretical physics.
Right, demanding that the viewer needs a solid grasp of theoretical physics, because otherwise, most of the jokes will go over a typical viewer's head.
A solid grasp, not just, watch a documentary once.
Right, and why theoretical physics? It seems like such a deliberate choice.
It really does.
They could have picked anything difficult,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
Medieval Latin, advanced calculus, structural engineering.
Sure.
But theoretical physics,
Mm-hmm.
it's high level, it's abstract, and crucially, it's often associated with concepts that sound really complex, especially in science fiction. Multiverses, quantum stuff, space-time.
Parallel dimensions,
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
And that's the strategic brilliance, I think. It acts as a kind of shorthand for maximum intellectual density, but density that's relevant to the kind of complex themes the show itself might touch on.
Okay, I see.
I mean, for the average person, theoretical physics sounds impossibly complex. inaccessible. So it instantly achieves that goal, excluding the typical viewer,
Yeah.
setting this ridiculously high intellectual hurdle.
So the author is basically saying, to get a punchline, you need to be ready to discuss, what, the many worlds interpretation? Or string theory?
That's the implication, yeah. The required knowledge isn't just trivia, it's presented as an intellectual flex, designed to elevate the show itself into some kind of serious scientific commentary.
Right.
The text implies the humor actually relies on understanding these deep scientific concepts, which transforms just enjoying a joke into successfully decrypting complex theories.
It elevates the whole thing.
Absolutely. Beyond just entertainment into a kind of specialized intellectual currency.
So the argument's got layers. First, you need the innate capacity, the high IQ.
Sure.
Second, you need the specialized difficult education, the physics.
Sure.
But the ultimate point of having all this, according to the text, isn't just understanding. It's about true appreciation.
Yes, that's the goal.
The text suggests real enjoyment comes from having the intellectual capacity to truly appreciate the depths of these jokes. And this is where it feels like the goalposts shift completely.
How so?
Because the jokes aren't just supposed to be funny anymore. We're told, quite explicitly, they say something deep about life.
Ah, the capital L-I-F-E. That's the ultimate move, isn't it, in terms of intellectual validation?
Seems like it.
By attaching philosophical significance, this deep truth about life, to getting the jokes, the author elevates the source material. It's not just entertainment anymore. It's a vehicle for, like, profound philosophical enlightenment.
So if you don't appreciate it,
You're not just failing to laugh or follow the story. You're failing a test of existential comprehension. You're failing to grasp these deep truths about human existence that are supposedly articulated through this cartoon.
wow.
Okay.
It makes the show a kind of crucible, doesn't it? A test designed to separate those who are philosophically equipped to confront the deep about life
From the rest of us.
from those who remain happily ignorant, just, scratching their heads while profound existential revelations are happening. So the intellectual barrier gets fortified by both science, the physics, and philosophy, the deep truth.
Okay, so if theoretical physics sets the scientific bar high,
Yeah.
this next section seems to ground the show in really specific, dense literary and political history. To set the philosophical bar just as high, maybe even higher.
Right. It brings in these heavyweight references.
We move on to the main character's claimed nihilistic outlook. The text says this is deftly woven into his characterization. Which, okay, maybe, but then the author goes way beyond just general philosophical stuff.
I think it's specific.
Very specific. They claim this outlook draws heavily from Narodnaya Volya literature.
Okay, now this is where the depth of the strategy becomes almost comically specific, but also highly effective if you're trying to build that intellectual wall.
Narodnaya Volya, what exactly is that?
Right, so Narodnaya Volya, it translates as people's will. It wasn't just some vague literary movement, it was a specific 19th century Russian revolutionary political organization.
Revolutionary.
Oh, yeah. They're most famous, or infamous, for organizing the assassination of Tsar Alexander II back in 1881.
Wow. Okay, so why pick them?
Well, Narodnaya Volya was deeply rooted in anarcho-nihilism. Their literature, their philosophy, often underground stuff, argued for the total destruction of the existing social, political, moral order, usually through revolutionary violence.
To clear the way for socialism.
Essentially, yes. Their whole philosophy was about the complete rejection of tradition, of established authority. Anything that couldn't be justified rationally, scientifically, had to go.
So the author is trying to link a modern cartoon character, a sci-fi character known for cynicism and breaking rules.
Yeah.
Not just to, say, Camus or Nietzsche, which you might expect.
Right, the usual suspects.
But specifically to the writings of 19th century Russian political revolutionaries, people who thought violence was the answer.
Precisely. And that's the ultimate act of, let's call it, highbrowing the source material. By citing Narodnaya Volya, the author gives the character this incredibly dense, radical, politically charged intellectual history.
It suggests he's not just some quirky scientist.
Exactly. He's framed as the ideological heir to 19th century revolutionary thought. And the implication for the viewer is clear. If you understand this link, you're not just a casual fan. You're someone versed in obscure political philosophy, in the history of radical social change.
It acts as this definitive intellectual anchor.
Totally. It puts the show, or claims to put it, in the realm of serious, world-altering political commentary, which is quite a claim for an animated comedy.
That level of specificity is
Yeah.
just Yeah, incredible. And then the author applies the exact same kind of lens, the same search for profound significance to what seems like the ultimate piece of lowbrow shorthand.
You mean?
The catchphrase, wubba-lubba-dub-dub.
Ah, yes.
The text actually asserts that this seemingly nonsensical phrase, often just shouted,
Yeah, it's pretty
is
specific.
actually a cryptic reference to Turgenev's Russian epic Fathers and Sons.
Okay. Right.
This feels like the perfect example because the phrase itself is inherently so. It sounds like the kind of throwaway line designed just for laughs.
Yeah.
But the text just assigns it this deep, hidden literary meaning.
And we probably need to quickly touch on Turgenev's Fathers and Sons, published 1862. It's absolutely fundamental if you want to understand Russian intellectual history. It's the book that really introduced the idea of the intellectual nihilist, the character Bazarov, to the Russian public. And the novel is all about this clash, this irreconcilable conflict between the older, traditional, maybe sentimental generation, the fathers, and the radical, science-obsessed youth, the sons, who just reject all authority, all beliefs that can't be proven scientifically.
The connection the author is making.
It tries to create this perfectly closed loop of intellectual justification. The author claims the show's most recognizable, maybe most throwaway element, the catchphrase, carries the same philosophical weight as the character's overall outlook, which they've already linked to Narodnaya Volya.
And both Narodnaya Volya and Turgenev.
Exactly. Both anchors the political revolutionaries and the classic novel exploring that exact philosophy. They're from the same highly specific, deeply intellectualized 19th century Russian context.
It's quite a rhetorical maneuver, isn't it? It basically transforms a piece of mass media into this coded text.
Yeah, a secret handshake.
Accessible only to people who've done the required reading, basically. Understood 19th century Russian politics. It turns just watching the show into this intellectual exercise in deciphering deep philosophical references.
And that's the synthesis, really, the calculated use of these two very specific, very niche citations. They ground the content not just in literature or philosophy in general.
No, it's much more specific.
But in highbrow, often quite inaccessible 19th century Russian intellectual history, specifically circling around nihilism and rejecting societal norms.
And the intended takeaway for the reader of this text
is that true enjoyment demands access to this profound hidden layer. It suggests that the show isn't just clever. It's historically rigorous. It's philosophically structured.
and only accessible to the select few.
The ones who, quote, understand this stuff. It's an intensely effective strategy if your goal is to validate your favorite show by placing it on the same shelf as, the great works of Russian realism and political theory.
Okay, so once that intellectual requirement is firmly established, you need the IQ, the physics, the knowledge of Narodnaya Volya, Turgenev.
The whole package.
The text then has to justify all this effort, right?
Yeah.
And it seems to do that by aggressively dismissing anyone who fails the test. The tone shifts from self-validation to, active exclusion, forceful exclusion.
Yeah, the walls go up and the insults start flying.
The polarization is immediate. It's absolute. If the fans understand this stuff, then the logical conclusion, the non-negotiable inverse, must be true. The text declares with total certainty that people who dislike it truly are idiots.
And the rhetorical move is so important because it completely wipes out the idea of subjective taste.
Right. There's no room left for just not finding it funny.
Correct.
Or being bored by the plot, or maybe thinking the themes are a bit repetitive.
Nope. Dislike is redefined. Fundamentally, it becomes an objective intellectual failing. The author successfully pulls the discussion out of the realm of preference.
And puts it squarely where?
Squarely in the realm of intelligence testing. And more than that, intellectual hierarchy. Who's smart, who's not.
Let's look at the specific language used, because it's pretty harsh. It describes those who don't appreciate the show. How?
Well, it uses terms designed to inflict maximum scorn. We get addle-pated simpletons, followed by this sort of performative pity. What fools! How I pity them.
Addle-pated simpletons. That's archaic. Deliberately over the top.
Yeah, it sounds like something out of a Dick Mook novel, almost. It aims for maximum intellectual condescension. Suggests a kind of congenital dullness.
But the pity part, how I pity them, that feels almost more damaging in a way.
I think it is, arguably. Pity implies this fundamental pathetic deficiency, something that's beyond the simpleton's control. By saying, how I pity them, the author gets to play the role of the benevolent superior.
While simultaneously dismissing the outgroup.
Brutally dismissing them as inherently lacking the necessary mental wiring for appreciation.
And the text also contrasts these simpletons with the intellectual elite, right? It describes the genius of the creators as something that just unfolds itself for the enlightened viewer.
Exactly. While the non-believers, the outsiders, are left scratching their heads in confusion.
That contrast uses a really powerful visual metaphor, doesn't it?
It does. The simpletons are shown as actively struggling, working hard but failing, to get access to this meaning that's just effortlessly revealed to the superior viewer. The genius simply unfolds itself for the worthy.
Which reinforces the main idea.
Absolutely. It validates the text's central claim that the show itself acts as this objective intellectual litmus test. Failure to understand isn't just internal, it's visible, physical confusion, the head scratching, which confirms your simpleton status.
And this leads directly to that moment of, well, intense personal satisfaction that the author reveals.
The emotional payoff.
Yeah. The author reveals the emotional reward for building this whole intellectual fortress. I'm smirking right now just imagining one of those addle-pated simpletons.
Ugh, smirk. That feels like the core motivation finally laid bare.
Doesn't it? It shifts the whole focus. It's not really about defending the show anymore or even analyzing it. It's all about the speaker's emotional experience of feeling intellectually elite.
Yeah, the text isn't written to educate anyone or persuade anyone. It feels purely like a celebration of belonging to this exclusive club, the smirk, and then there's that laughing emoji later.
Right.
They act like the punctuation mark on the whole argument. It shows the primary goal is that feeling of intellectual separation, of superior status, enjoyed at the expense of the vast, pitiable minority.
So the function is purely performative.
Entirely performative. The author is performing intellectual dominance for their own benefit and for anyone else they perceive as being in their in-group. The figure of the smirking simpleton, that confused hypothetical audience member, is actually necessary for the author's self-definition.
You need the other to define yourself against.
Exactly. Without the designated idiot who fails the test of physics and Russian literature, the high IQ viewer kind of loses their context, their justification for feeling special and validated. The scorn is what fuels the whole thing. It's self-reinforcing.
Okay, so the final section of this text, it moves away from the generalized claims about IQ in literature.
Yeah, it gets personal.
And moves into these hyper-specific personal assertions, which seem to act as the ultimate, physical validation.
Yeah.
And the final boundary-setting mechanism.
Locking the gates for good.
The first personal admission is the statement. And yes, by the way, I do have a Rick and Morty tattoo. The Dio is capitalized.
Right, and that's a critical transition. The author takes the claim of superior intellect out of the abstract realm, IQ scores, physics knowledge,
Yeah.
and puts it into the physical, a permanent demonstration of allegiance. A tattoo is, a permanent mark of commitment. It links the speaker's body, their identity, not just to the show, but to this whole intellectual structure they've built around it.
It validates them as a true believer.
A true, dedicated, physically committed follower. It grounds all that abstract intellectual elitism in something actual, physical, permanent, like sacrifice almost.
But the author isn't just happy showing off this symbol of commitment.
Oh no, not at all.
They immediately assert total, strict control over who is even worthy to view this symbol of high intellect.
Which leads to
These really bizarre, hyper-specific qualification requirements for seeing the tattoo. First, it's for the ladies' eyes only.
okay, so layer one, gender-specific exclusivity.
Right. But even within that already restricted group, the main barrier comes back to intellect
Yeah.
and math. The potential viewer has to demonstrate that they're within 5 IQ points of my own, preferably lower, beforehand.
Wow. Okay, let's unpack that, preferably lower.
Yeah. That single statement feels like a spectacular distillation of, well, maybe insecurity dressed up as dominance.
It certainly seems complex.
You've got this multi-layered control system all working at once. First, the big intellectual requirements, IQ, physics, just to be in the club generally. Second, the physical proof, the tattoo. Third, the social filter, women only. And fourth, this mathematically defined intellectual barrier, the IQ score range.
Let's focus on that mathematical bit and the psychological aspect, because within 5 IQ points is revealing enough.
Right. It ensures they're smart enough.
It ensures the potential partner is intellectually worthy, yeah? They won't be one of the addle-pated simpletons who can't appreciate the tattoo's profound significance, presumably.
But then
the kicker, preferably lower, that exposes, I think, the speaker's core need, the need for guaranteed intellectual superiority within that interaction.
so they're not looking for an equal.
Doesn't sound like it. Not someone who might challenge their mastery of Narodnaya Volya or theoretical physics, perhaps. They seem to be seeking a companion who is intelligent enough to validate the author's genius.
But conveniently placed just slightly below that threshold.
Exactly. 5 points below, ideally. It's an environment carefully engineered to sustain the speaker's status as the smartest person in that specific interaction. Any potential threat to that supremacy is mathematically screened out before you even get to see the tattoo.
It's the ultimate intellectual micromanagement.
Pretty much.
The speaker isn't just interested in connection, it seems. They're creating this rigidly controlled intellectual ecosystem where their position at the very top is mathematically guaranteed. That desire for preferably lower IQ really seems to confirm that the whole manifesto might be driven more by a need to maintain dominance than by genuine enthusiasm for the show itself.
The tattoo, which should symbolize commitment, ends up being the centerpiece of a social control mechanism.
Yeah, and this all culminates, the whole text ends with this final, abrupt, very dismissive closing line. Nothing personnel, kid. Spelled P-E-R-S-O-N-N-E-L.
Right, and comes with the sunglasses emoji.
The misspelling
Yeah.
is that significant.
Well, it's notable. Whether it's a deliberate nod to a specific internet meme or just a typo, I mean, who knows? But in the context of online talk, nothing personnel kid often acts as this kind of aggressive, almost faux apologetic sign-off, usually after delivering some kind of burn or harsh judgment.
Like saying,
Look, I've just established your fundamental intellectual inferiority, but hey, don't take it personally. That's just the way things are. It's dismissive.
Right.
So that phrase, combined with everything that came before the IQ, the physics, the Russian lit, the pity, the smirk, the tattoo rules, it just solidifies the speaker's persona, an unapologetic intellectual elitist,
They've used abstract knowledge, dense history, personal details.
all to assert superiority and dismiss anyone who disagrees. And then they sign off with this casual, almost troll-like phrase. It feels like the perfect, cutting, aggressive end to this whole detailed manifesto of intellectual self-assertion. Hashtag tag outro.
So if we just step back for a second and summarize what we've pulled out of this, this really remarkable piece of source material.
That's quite something.
It feels like the text functions as this powerful, complex case study. It's intellectual self-glorification, really, disguised as media analysis.
That seems fair.
We tracked how it calculatedly sets up these high intellectual barriers needing the high IQ, the detailed grasp of theoretical physics.
Right.
We looked at the strategic use of really dense, pretty obscure literary and political history, citing Narodnaya Volya, Turgenev, specifically to claim depth for the show. Sure, but maybe more importantly to justify excluding the typical viewer.
The justification for the exclusion seems key.
And finally, we broke down that aggressive rhetoric, the scorn, the pity, and that incredibly detailed, multi-layered social control system built around the IQ-gated tattoo access.
Yeah.
So this text, it functions less like a critique of pop culture and much more like a meticulously structured manifesto about intellectual exclusivity and maybe dominance.
Which leads us to think about the broader implications, right? What does analyzing a document like this tell us?
What do you think?
Well, I think it tells us a lot about how people can use specialized knowledge, or sometimes just the claim of specialized knowledge to define their community and ultimately to define their own self-worth.
Okay.
The knowledge cited here, I mean, whether the author genuinely has mastered theoretical physics or the details of 19th century Russian assassinations, it doesn't almost matter in terms of its function here.
How so?
Because it functions purely as a really effective badge of honor. And crucially, as a tool for sharp social differentiation, making us distinct from them.
Right.
The main purpose of citing such, esoteric knowledge in this context doesn't seem to be about enriching everyone's understanding of the show.
No.
It seems to be about demonstrating that the speaker belongs to this select, enlightened group, uniquely qualified to get it, which separates them from the masses. The knowledge becomes, in this rhetorical context, a kind of currency for feeling superior, not really a tool for genuine shared enlightenment or education.
Which leaves us with a final, maybe provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider. If appreciating a piece of pop culture gets defined only by having access to obscure references and high-level academic concepts, and this sort of aggressive disdain for anyone who doesn't connect those specific dots, does that actually make the content itself inherently superior, objectively deeper? Or does it maybe just reflect a really profound internal psychological need? A need for the audience member to feel separate, validated, special, superior to their peers? We'd ask you to think about that critical difference. the difference between shared, genuine enthusiasm for something.
And this kind of highly enforced, almost mathematically managed intellectual elitism.
Thank you for joining us on this very deep dive into the rhetoric of required intelligence.
Yeah, fascinating stuff.
We hope this gives you maybe a new, more critical lens for looking at any claims of necessary knowledge, whether it's in pop culture, art, or really any field of human endeavor. We'll see you next time.